Hello NDE narrator. I just came across your channel a week ago and the testimonies have been mind-blowing. Glory to Jesus. I always thought my persecution was the worst, but hearing from other new converts has really strengthened me to send mine too. My name is Yusuf Omar Al-Hamadi, and I was born in the city of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. From the moment I opened my eyes to this world, Islam surrounded me like the air I breathed. My father, Sheikh Omar Al-Hamadi, was a respected imam at Al-Noor Mosque, a man loved by the community and feared by those who strayed from Islamic laws. My earliest memories are filled with the sound of the adhan echoing through the streets before dawn. My father's deep voice reciting Surah Al-Fatiha in the stillness of our home, and my mother, Fatima, adjusting her black abaya as she prepared for morning prayers. Islam wasn't just a religion in our house. It was our identity, our culture, and our unspoken law. From the time I could walk, my father made sure I joined him at the mosque, first holding my small hand as we walked, later pushing me to lead prayers in front of other children as he smiled with pride. By the age of 6, I had already memorized several surahs from the Quran, encouraged daily by my mother, who sat with me in the evenings, her hands tracing the Arabic letters in my mushaf. During Ramadan, while other children might have been excused from fasting, my father insisted I join the family in fasting from sunrise to sunset. He would say, "Yusuf, you are not like others. You are the son of an imam. Allah expects more from you." I can still feel the hunger pangs in my stomach, the dryness of my throat as I watched classmates drink water at school, but I bore it with pride. It made me feel strong, righteous, closer to Allah. Our neighborhood in Sharjah was filled with other devout families. Boys my age were trained early in Islamic discipline. We attended Quranic classes after school, sat for hours at a time learning tajweed, the art of reciting the Quran, and competed with each other over who could memorize the most verses. At 13, I was sent to a madrasa in Dubai to strengthen my knowledge of Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh, and hadith. My father believed I had a calling to lead others like he did. The imams at the madrasa were strict. They taught us to view the world through a lens of haram and halal, of kafir and mu'min. And they warned us constantly about the dangers of Western influence, Christianity, and Jews. They showed us videos of Palestinian children suffering and blamed the Christians and Zionists for the plight of Muslims everywhere. Those images stirred anger and a sense of duty in my young heart. I remember thinking, we Muslims must remain pure and strong. We cannot let the infidels corrupt our faith. My father often said the same during Friday sermons at Al-Noor Mosque, and his words echoed in my mind like sacred truth. As I entered my teenage years, I began to take a more active role in defending Islam. In Sharjah's university circles, even as a teenager, I joined debates with Shiite students, passionately arguing against their beliefs. I read extensively from the Quran and the Hadiths, preparing arguments that would leave older students speechless. I remember one heated debate at Al-Qasimiyya University, where I stood before a group of Shiite youths and said, "You call yourselves Muslims, yet you pray to imams and cry over Karbala like Christians cry over Jesus. Allah is one, and Muhammad is his messenger. To elevate men to Allah's level is shirk." The older students applauded, and I felt pride swell in my chest. Even my teachers began to speak of me as a future scholar, someone destined to follow in my father's footsteps or perhaps rise even higher. At home, my father treated me with a mixture of stern discipline and deep affection. He woke me every day for Fajr prayers, sometimes gently shaking my shoulder, other times pouring cold water on my face if I resisted. He often said, "Yusuf, this world is a test. Every moment we live is for Allah, or it is wasted. Do not be like the others. You are chosen for greater things." Those words became a silent mantra for me, guiding my thoughts and actions. I avoided friendships with non-Muslims, looked down on classmates who skipped prayers, and reported any boys who were caught watching Western movies or listening to music. In my heart, I believed I was pleasing Allah, earning hasanat, rewards for my diligence. By 18, I had read the Quran cover to cover multiple times, not just for recitation, but to internalize its laws. I took special pride in studying Surah At-Tawbah, where Allah commands the believers to fight the disbelievers. I remember sitting in my room late at night reading Surah 9:29. Fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful. I underlined those verses, believing they were proof of Islam's strength and righteousness. If anyone dared question why Muslims must oppose Jews and Christians, I had my answers ready. In my mind, this was not hatred, it was obedience to Allah. Life in Sharjah was simple but deeply religious. Fridays were sacred. My father's sermons at Al-Noor Mosque attracted hundreds. He spoke with fire and passion, warning of Western corruption, secularism, and the danger of apostasy. If anyone among you turns from Islam, he thundered, his blood is halal. Protect your homes, your families, your faith. I stood proudly in the front row, soaking in every word, determined to live by them. My mother, though gentler, often echoed my father's warnings. She would whisper, "Yusuf, never trust the outsiders. Their hearts are dark. Only Allah is light." When I entered the United Arab Emirates University in Al Ain at 19, I carried this same zeal with me. I joined the Islamic Student Union and quickly rose as a leader. I organized Friday prayer groups, hosted Quran memorization contests, and invited guest sheikhs to speak on topics like jihad and resisting Western ideologies. Non-Muslims were rare in our circles, but when they did appear, I treated them with suspicion. To me, they were potential threats, people who needed either guidance or to be kept at arm's length. I looked at Christian missionaries as deceivers, wolves in sheep's clothing, trying to lure weak Muslims astray. Even though I studied engineering, I saw my education as secondary to my faith. My goal was clear: to serve Allah in every sphere of life. I planned to marry a devout Muslim woman, raise a strong Islamic family, and maybe even return to Sharjah to take over my father's role as imam when he retired. But life, as I would later realize, has a way of shattering even the most carefully laid plans. At that time, though, I felt unshakable. I believed I was on the straight path, Sirat al-Mustaqim, and nothing could ever turn me away from Islam. That confidence only deepened when I met Aliyah bin Rashid al-Maktoum during my second year. She was intelligent, soft-spoken, and the daughter of one of Dubai's wealthiest and most influential sheikhs. We met at a student forum in Al Ain, and I admired her modesty, her perfect hijab, and her knowledge of the Quran. Our conversations were innocent but meaningful, filled with discussions about faith and our dreams of serving the Ummah. I didn't know then that Aliyah would play such a central role in both the happiest and the most painful chapters of my life. I still remember the first day I saw her. It was a breezy afternoon on the campus of the United Arab Emirates University in Al Ain. The palm trees swayed gently as students hurried between classes, but my eyes were fixed on one person, Aliyah bin Rashid al-Maktoum. She wasn't like the other girls. There was a quiet dignity about her, a calm presence that seemed to draw people without effort. She wore her hijab perfectly, her eyes lowered with modesty, yet her confidence showed in the way she carried herself. I didn't know then that she was the daughter of Sheikh Rashid bin Khalifa al-Maktoum, one of Dubai's most powerful and wealthy men. At that moment, she was simply Aliyah, the girl who stirred something in my heart that I had never felt before. Our first meeting wasn't planned. We were both attending a student forum on Islamic leadership, and as fate would have it, we ended up sitting at the same table. She spoke eloquently about the role of Muslim youth in preserving Islamic values amid globalization. I found myself captivated, not just by her words, but by her conviction. When it was my turn to speak, I felt an unusual nervousness, something I hadn't experienced even during my heated debates with Shiite students. After the session, I mustered the courage to greet her. "Assalamu alaikum," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She returned the greeting with a soft smile and a polite nod. That simple exchange marked the beginning of a journey that would change my life forever. Over the next few months, we saw each other often at university events, always in group settings. Our conversations were measured and respectful, in line with Islamic principles of modesty. We talked about our shared dreams of serving the Ummah, of raising pious families, and of making our parents proud. I learned that Aliyah had grown up in Dubai's elite circles, her childhood spent in sprawling villas and private schools. Yet she spoke with humility, never boasting about her background. Her father, Sheikh Rashid, was known across the UAE for his immense wealth and close ties to the ruling Al-Maktoum family. He owned luxury hotels, shopping malls, and even a minority stake in Emaar properties. To many, he was untouchable. But Aliyah didn't carry herself with arrogance. Instead, she seemed weighed down by her father's status, longing for a simple life of faith and purpose. When I told my parents about Aliyah, my mother's eyes lit up with delight, but my father's expression was more guarded. "Yusuf," he said, "this family is powerful. Their world is different from ours. Are you prepared for the challenges that come with such a union?" I assured him that my intentions were pure and that Aliyah shared my vision for a devout Islamic household. Encouraged by my mother's prayers, I gathered the courage to formally approach Sheikh Rashid for his daughter's hand. The meeting at his Emirates Hills mansion was the most intimidating experience of my life. He was a tall, imposing man with a piercing gaze that seemed to read my soul. Surrounded by gold accents, crystal chandeliers, and expensive artwork, I felt out of place. He asked probing questions about my family, my career ambitions, and most importantly, my commitment to Islam. I answered truthfully, emphasizing my Quranic studies and my dreams of raising a righteous family. To my surprise, Sheikh Rashid agreed to the marriage, though with a stern warning. "Yusuf, my daughter is my jewel. Protect her honor, guide her in Islam, and never bring shame to this family." I nodded earnestly, promising to uphold his trust. Our nikah was held at Jumeirah Mosque in Dubai, a magnificent structure with intricate white minarets and serene courtyards. The ceremony was lavish, attended by sheikhs, businessmen, and members of Dubai's high society. Aliyah and I were seated separately, in accordance with tradition, but I caught glimpses of her from across the hall. She looked radiant in her white abaya and golden jewelry, her eyes shyly meeting mine for a fleeting second. That evening, as we exchanged vows before Allah, I felt like the most blessed man alive. After the wedding, we moved into a luxurious villa in Emirates Hills, a gift from Sheikh Rashid. The house was unlike anything I had ever seen. Marble floors, imported Italian furniture, a private pool, and even a home theater. My new life was one of privilege and influence. We were invited to exclusive gatherings, our names listed among Dubai's elite. Yet despite the wealth surrounding us, Aliyah and I tried to keep our home rooted in faith. We prayed together, recited Quran with our children, and hosted Ramadan iftars for neighbors and friends. Our first child, Omar, was born in 2007, followed by Maryam in 2009, and Khalid in 2012. Each time I held my newborn in my arms, I whispered a prayer of gratitude to Allah, promising to raise them as strong Muslims who would honor their lineage. Life in Dubai seemed perfect on the surface. I was a senior engineer at Dubai Petroleum, respected in my field and admired in my community. Aliyah was a devoted wife and mother, her days filled with managing the household and nurturing our children. We often took family trips to the Dubai Mall, watched the Dubai fountains dancing lights, and spent weekends at Jumeirah Beach. Our children attended prestigious private schools, where Arabic and Islamic studies were emphasized alongside modern education. To outsiders, we were the picture of an ideal Emirati family, wealthy, influential, and unwaveringly Islamic. But even in this seemingly perfect life, I sensed an emptiness I couldn't name. I immersed myself further into religious activities, hoping to fill the void. I joined charity projects, funded mosque renovations, and sponsored orphans during Eid. Yet late at night, as I sat in my luxurious study, lined with books on Islamic jurisprudence, I felt a gnawing restlessness. I told myself it was just the weight of responsibility. Being a husband, father, and son-in-law to Sheikh Rashid was no small task. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Aliyah noticed my quiet moments, but never pressed. She believed in my strength, in my ability to lead our family in faith. And for years I did. I woke our children for Fajr, taught Omar how to recite Surah Al-Ikhlas, and explained to Maryam why modesty was a jewel for a Muslim woman. Khalid, the youngest, clung to my leg as I prepared for work each morning, his innocent laughter a reminder of Allah's blessings. I was determined to give them everything: faith, love, and the best life possible. It was the spring of 2018 when my company sent me on a business trip to Amman, Jordan. I had traveled for work many times before, but this trip felt different. Perhaps it was the beauty of the ancient city, with its rolling hills and historic mosques, or maybe it was my own restless heart, though I didn't realize it at the time. After a day of meetings, I decided to walk through the streets near Rainbow Street, letting the cool evening breeze clear my mind. That's when I met Elias Haddad. He was sitting outside a small cafe, reading a book in Arabic. His calm presence caught my attention, and though I didn't know why, I felt drawn to greet him. "Assalamu alaikum," I said politely. He looked up, smiled warmly, and replied, "Wa alaikum salam." It was only later I would learn he was a Lebanese Christian, and that this meeting was no accident, but the beginning of a journey I could never have imagined. Elias invited me to join him for tea, and our conversation began innocently enough. He asked about my work and family, and I spoke proudly of Aliyah and our 3 children. But when he mentioned faith, I felt a sudden tension. "I am a follower of Jesus," he said, his voice gentle yet confident. I stiffened slightly, unsure how to respond. I had grown up hearing that Christians were misguided, their scriptures corrupted, their beliefs blasphemous. Yet Elias didn't fit the image I carried in my mind. He wasn't argumentative or arrogant. Instead, he spoke of his faith with a quiet certainty. When he saw my unease, he smiled and reached into his bag, pulling out a small book. "This is the Injil in Arabic," he said, placing it gently on the table. "Would you read it? Just once? Not as a believer, but as a man seeking truth." I hesitated. My father had warned me many times about Christians trying to lead Muslims astray. But curiosity stirred within me, and before I could think it through, I nodded. Returning to Dubai, I hid the Injil deep in my suitcase, unsure why I hadn't thrown it away. That night, after putting the children to bed, I sat alone in my study. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. I stared at the Injil for a long time, my hands trembling as I reached for it. Opening it felt like a betrayal of everything I believed, yet I couldn't stop myself. I began reading the Gospel of John. The first verse struck me. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." My heart pounded. What was this? I kept reading until I reached John 14:6. "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I closed the book quickly, my mind racing. How could Jesus say such a thing? Was this arrogance or truth? I whispered under my breath, Astaghfirullah, asking Allah to forgive me for even reading it. But the words stayed with me, echoing in my mind like an uninvited guest. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the unease growing within me. I continued to read the Injil in secret, each night after Aliyah and the children had gone to sleep. Matthew 5:44 nearly broke me. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Love your enemies? Pray for those who harm you? This was unlike anything I had ever read in the Quran. Islam taught me to defend the faith, to stand against those who opposed Allah and His Messenger. Yet here was Jesus speaking of love that extended even to one's enemies. Could such a message come from Shaitan, or was this truly divine? I began to question the teachings I had followed all my life. My father had often recited Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:51. O you who believe, do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends. They are friends of one another. But Elias's kindness, his genuine care, seemed to contradict the image of Christians I had been given. I thought of the Western missionaries my teachers had described as deceivers, and I compared them to Elias's quiet humility. Could I have been wrong all this time? The thought terrified me. What if everything I believed, everything I had built my life upon, was not the truth? I felt as though I was standing on shifting sand, my foundation cracking beneath me. One night, overwhelmed by these thoughts, I fell asleep in my study, the Injil still open beside me. That's when I had the first dream. I was standing in a vast desert, the sky above me heavy with dark clouds. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the distance, growing closer until it enveloped me completely. From within the light, a man in radiant white robes stepped forward. His face was filled with a peace I couldn't describe, and his eyes seemed to see straight into my soul. He spoke just one word, follow. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. Was this a message from Allah, a test of my faith? Or was it Shaitan trying to lead me astray? I whispered urgently, Allahu Akbar, trying to push away the memory of the dream, but it lingered like a shadow in my mind. Over the next few weeks, the dreams continued. Each time the man in white appeared, always saying the same thing, follow. I grew afraid to sleep, afraid of what these visions meant. I consulted an imam at a nearby mosque, describing the dreams without revealing my secret readings of the Injil. He advised me to pray more, to read Surah Al-Baqarah, and to seek protection from Shaitan. I obeyed, spending long hours in prayer, but the dreams did not stop. Instead, they grew more vivid. In one dream, I saw myself walking on a narrow bridge suspended over a deep chasm. The man in white stood at the other end, his hand outstretched. Yusuf, trust me, he said. I woke with tears streaming down my face, whispering, Ya Allah, guide me, show me the truth. Is this you or am I being deceived? I began fasting outside of Ramadan, seeking clarity through sacrifice. I begged Allah to remove the confusion clouding my heart. Yet each time I opened the Quran for answers, I found only fear and warnings. But when I read the Injil, I felt an unfamiliar peace, a warmth that softened my heart. I hated that feeling. It made me feel like a traitor to my family, my faith, and my people. And yet I couldn't stop returning to it. It was as though something or someone was gently pulling me toward a truth I didn't want to face. At home, Aliyah noticed my growing distraction. Yusuf, is something troubling you? She asked one evening as we sat together. I forced a smile and shook my head. No, just work stress. But inside, a storm raged. How could I tell her that the man she married, the man her father trusted, was questioning the very faith that bound our family together. To confess would mean not just my disgrace, but the ruin of everything we had built. So I remained silent, burying my turmoil beneath a mask of normalcy. As the weeks turned into months, I felt trapped between two worlds. One was the life I had always known, Islam, my family, my community. The other was a fragile, dangerous curiosity about Jesus and his teachings. Each night I asked myself, what if I'm wrong? What if I turn my back on Islam and face Allah's wrath? But then another question would whisper in the darkness. What if you're already wrong, and this is Allah's way of showing you the truth? These thoughts haunted me day and night, a relentless tug of war in my soul. Looking back, I see now that those seeds of doubt were not the work of Shaitan, but the gentle call of the shepherd seeking his lost sheep. At the time, however, I was too afraid to admit it, too bound by fear of the consequences. I had no idea that my search for truth would soon lead me down a path from which there would be no return. It was a quiet evening in March 2019 when everything changed for me. I was alone in my Emirates Hills villa, seated in my study as the call to Maghrib prayers echoed faintly from a distant mosque. The children were asleep, and Aliyah was visiting her mother across town. I stared at the Injil on my desk, its worn pages illuminated by a single desk lamp. For months I had wrestled with questions that tore at my soul. But that night something inside me broke. I whispered, Jesus, if you are truly the Son of God, if you are the way, show me. I don't want to be deceived. I want the truth, even if it costs me everything. As tears streamed down my face, I felt a warmth fill the room, a peace so overwhelming that I dropped to my knees. It was as if unseen hands lifted the burden of fear and confusion from my shoulders. I knew then that I could no longer deny him. That night, in the silence of my luxurious study, I surrendered my life to Christ. The days that followed were filled with a strange mixture of joy and terror. Joy because for the first time in my life, I felt truly free, as if chains I didn't even know I wore had been broken. Terror because I knew the cost of this freedom. In the UAE, leaving Islam was not just a betrayal of faith. It was a betrayal of family, culture, and nation. Apostasy was punishable by death under Sharia law, and I was married into one of Dubai's most powerful families. I continued to pray and read the Injil in secret, hiding my Bible and prayer journal in a locked drawer. At work and at home, I maintained the outward appearance of a devout Muslim, leading prayers with my children, attending Friday prayers at Jumeirah Mosque with Aliyah, and reciting the Quran aloud when my in-laws visited. But inside, I was changed forever. I had found the truth, and there was no turning back. I thought I was careful enough to keep my new faith hidden, but secrets have a way of surfacing. One afternoon, I returned home from a meeting to find Aliyah standing in my study, her face pale and her hands trembling. On the desk lay my Bible, open to the Gospel of Matthew, and beside it, my journal filled with prayers to Jesus. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yusuf, what is this?" she asked, her voice breaking. I tried to speak, but no words came. The air between us felt heavy, suffocating. Tears welled up in her eyes as realization dawned. "You've left Islam," she whispered. "You've betrayed Allah and us." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away as if my touch burned her. "How could you do this to our family, to my father?" Her voice grew louder, filled with anguish and anger. I wanted to explain, to tell her about the peace I had found, but fear choked my words. That night, Aliyah packed a small bag and left with the children without saying a word. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. 2 days later, I received a summons from Sheikh Rashid. When I entered his mansion, the atmosphere was ice cold. He sat in his grand salon, surrounded by advisors and family members. His face, usually calm and commanding, was twisted with rage. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low but deadly. "Have you become a murtad?" I remained silent, knowing that any denial would be useless. "You have dishonored my daughter, my grandchildren, and this family's name," he thundered. "You bring shame not only to us but to all of Dubai." I tried to speak of my journey, of how I had found the truth in Christ, but he cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Silence. You will not poison this family with your blasphemy." He then ordered his men to escort me out, warning that I was no longer welcome in his home or near his daughter and children. Within days, my life unraveled completely. Sheikh Rashid's influence was vast, and he wasted no time using it. Through his connections in the Dubai Sharia court, he filed for divorce on Aliyah's behalf, citing my apostasy as grounds for immediate separation and sole custody of our children. I was not allowed to see Omar, Mariam, or Khalid. My calls went unanswered, my messages unread. I heard from a family friend that Sheikh Rashid had instructed Aliyah never to speak to me again, warning her that even a whisper of sympathy for a murtad could tarnish the family's honor. As if losing my family wasn't enough, Sheikh Rashid moved to strip me of my home. The villa in Emirates Hills, a wedding gift from him, was reclaimed through legal loopholes. One evening, while I was away at a meeting, his men arrived with court orders and began removing my belongings. When I returned, I found the gates locked, my access revoked. All I had left were a few personal items I had taken to my office earlier that day. I stood outside the villa that had once been filled with my children's laughter and wept like a man who had lost everything. But Sheikh Rashid wasn't finished. Weeks later, I was summoned to Dubai Police Headquarters. There, I was accused of financial fraud, a charge fabricated by Rashid's allies to justify my arrest. I protested my innocence, but my words fell on deaf ears. I was handcuffed and taken to Alawir Central Prison, a place notorious for its harsh conditions. As the prison gates closed behind me, I realized just how far my father-in-law's reach extended. Alone in a cold, dark cell, I replayed the events that had brought me there. The price of following Christ was higher than I had ever imagined, yet even in that moment of despair, a small voice whispered within me, "Do not be afraid. I am with you." The air inside Alawir Central Prison was heavy with despair and the faint stench of damp concrete. As the metal door clanged shut behind me, I realized this was now my reality. I had entered as Yusuf Al-Hamadi, once a respected engineer, husband, and father. But to my captors, I was a murtad, a traitor to Islam deserving of humiliation and death. My cell was small and windowless, the only light coming from a single flickering bulb overhead. The thin mattress on the floor smelled of mildew, and the walls bore deep scratches where others before me had carved out their pain. I sat on the cold floor, my hands still aching from the tight cuffs, and whispered a silent prayer to Jesus. "Lord, if you are truly with me, give me strength. Don't let me break." I knew Sheikh Rashid's influence reached far beyond the courtroom. Here, in this place, he controlled my fate. The days turned into a blur of interrogation and intimidation. Guards dragged me into dimly lit rooms where officials in kandaras demanded I recant my faith. "Return to Islam," they said. "Say the Shahada now and you will be spared." I refused, my voice quiet but firm. Each refusal was met with blows from thick rubber batons across my back and legs. They called me names, kafir, najis, and spat at me as I lay on the floor. My body bruised and my ribs ached. But I clung to the memory of that night in my study when I first felt Christ's peace. In solitary confinement, I recited verses from the Injil I had memorized, whispering Matthew 10:22. "You will be hated by everyone because of me, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved." Even as fear gnawed at my soul, I felt an unexplainable sense of calm deep within me. Meals were scarce and barely edible, a few pieces of stale bread and a tin cup of water. I grew weak, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. Nights were the hardest. Alone in the silence, I thought of Aliyah and the children. I wondered if Mariam still clung to her doll at night, or if Omar asked about me. Did Khalid, so young and full of laughter, even remember his father? The ache in my chest was worse than any beating. Yet in the midst of my sorrow, the visions returned. Often in the dead of night, I would see a man in radiant white standing at the edge of my cell. His face glowed with love and strength, and his voice was like a gentle breeze. "Yusuf, do not fear, I am with you." Each time I woke with tears streaming down my face, my heart strengthened for another day. One morning, a group of imams came to my cell. They were sent by the prison authorities, at Sheikh Rashid's request, to save my soul before it was too late. They sat across from me, their faces solemn. "Brother Yusuf, you are lost," one began. "The Quran says in Surah Al-Imran 3:85, whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will never be accepted of him. Repent now, and Allah will forgive you." I listened silently, my head bowed. Inside, I prayed for the courage to stand firm. When I finally spoke, my words surprised even me. "I have found the truth. Jesus is not just a prophet. He is the Son of God. He saved me, and I cannot deny him." The imams recoiled in shock, their eyes flashing with anger. One spat on the ground. "You are dead already. May Allah curse you." They left, their failed mission reported back to Sheikh Rashid. Punishment followed swiftly. I was transferred to a darker, smaller cell and left without food for 2 days. When the guards did come, it was not to feed me, but to beat me again. My body bore wounds that would take months to heal, but my spirit remained unbroken. I sang quietly to myself the few Christian hymns Elias had taught me back in Amman, each word a lifeline in the darkness. Fasting became my only connection to the divine. I went days without food voluntarily, using the hunger to focus my prayers. Though my body weakened, my faith grew stronger. I began to sense that Christ was preparing me for something greater, though I could not yet see what it was. Weeks turned into months, and still no word from Aliyah or my children. I heard rumors from other inmates that Sheikh Rashid had remarried her to a cousin to protect the family's honor. Whether true or not, the thought crushed me. I longed to hold my children, to tell them I loved them, but I knew they were being taught to hate me. I pictured Omar, my eldest, standing tall beside his grandfather, vowing never to speak of his apostate father. Yet even in my grief, I whispered, "Lord, take care of them. If I never see them again, let them know your love." The prison authorities began to speak openly of my execution. Under UAE Penal Code Article 1 and 234, apostasy was a capital offense. One guard, a tall man with a thick beard, smirked as he passed my cell. "Enjoy your last days, Yusuf. Soon your head will roll, and your kafir blood will wash away your shame." His words chilled me, yet I felt a strange peace. I remembered Luke 12:4, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that can do no more." I resolved that even if death awaited me, I would not deny my Savior. As the day of my sentencing approached, I spent every waking moment in prayer. My voice, once strong and confident, was now little more than a whisper. But I prayed not for deliverance. I prayed for strength to remain faithful. I prayed for Aliyah and the children, for Sheikh Rashid, even for the guards who had beaten me. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," I whispered, echoing Christ's words on the cross. In those prayers, I found a depth of love I had never known before. Then one night, as I lay on the cold floor, too weak to move, I saw the man in white again. This time he came closer, his face illuminated by a light brighter than the sun. He knelt beside me and said, "Yusuf, you will not die here. I have more for you to do." I woke gasping, my heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and hope. Could this be real? Or was it the last flicker of a dying mind? I didn't know, but I clung to his words like a drowning man clings to driftwood. The air in Alawir Central Prison seemed heavier in those final days, as rumors of my execution spread among inmates and guards alike. Some whispered I would be taken out at dawn, my body discarded without ceremony, while others claimed Sheikh Rashid himself had arranged for a private execution to silence the scandal I had brought upon his family. Each night I lay on the cold concrete floor, my frail body racked with pain from months of beatings and starvation. But my spirit clung stubbornly to life. I prayed silently, whispering verses from the Injil I still remembered. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." It was in this valley that I first noticed Sami Haddad, a prison guard with eyes that didn't burn with hatred like the others. There was something different in the way he looked at me, almost as if he knew my secret. Sami's visits began innocently enough. He would linger near my cell during his rounds, asking if I needed water or a blanket. One evening, as the call to Isha prayers echoed faintly from the distance, he leaned close to the bars and whispered, "I am a follower of Jesus too." My eyes widened in disbelief. Could this be a trap? But something in his voice, steady and warm, told me it wasn't. He shared his own story quietly, of growing up in a Maronite Christian family in Lebanon and finding Christ in a deeper way during his years in Dubai. Then, with a nervous glance over his shoulder, Sami said, "Last night I had a dream. Jesus stood before me and said, 'Help Yusuf, for I have more for him to do.'" My breath caught in my throat. Was this possible? Could Christ really deliver me from this place? But before I could reply, Sami walked away, leaving me alone with a flicker of hope I dared not believe. The plan came together in whispers and hurried glances over several nights. Sami explained that on Fridays, the prison sanitation team had a change in schedule, allowing outsiders in to clean certain wings. If we timed it right, I could slip out dressed as one of them. My heart raced at the thought. The risk was immense. If caught, I would be executed on the spot and Sami along with me. Yet deep inside, a voice urged me forward. "This is the way. Walk in it." On the appointed day, Sami brought me prison overalls and a face mask. My body trembled as I slipped into the disguise, my mind warring between fear and faith. As the sanitation team filed past the guards, I fell into step, keeping my head low and my hands steady. Each second felt like an eternity. The gate loomed ahead. Would they stop me? Would the ruse hold? But to my astonishment, the guard barely glanced at me as we passed through. The metal gate clanged shut behind us, and I felt the night air on my skin for the first time in months. Once outside, I followed Sami's instructions precisely. I slipped away from the group and headed for the industrial district, keeping to the shadows. From there, I began the long, perilous journey across the desert toward the UAE-Oman border. Nights in the desert were bitterly cold, and days threatened to bake me alive, but I pressed on with only a small canteen of water Sami had given me. I avoided roads and checkpoints, moving under cover of darkness. Twice I heard vehicles approach them and threw myself into thorny bushes to avoid being seen. My feet blistered and bled, but I kept walking, whispering prayers for strength. "Lord, you brought me this far. Don't let me die now." On the third night, I finally reached the border, a thin line of wire fencing under a crescent moon. Trembling, I crawled through a gap and stepped onto Omani soil. In Muscat, I found temporary refuge at a small guest house run by a kind Pakistani Christian family. They fed me and tended to my wounds without asking too many questions. With Sami's contacts, I secured passage on a cargo ship bound for Mombasa, Kenya. Hiding in the belly of the ship among crates of goods, I felt both fear and gratitude. Each creak of the metal hull reminded me how close I was to being discovered. But each night, as the waves rocked me to sleep, I dreamed of the man in white, his hand reaching out to pull me from the darkness. After 5 tense days at sea, the ship docked in Mombasa. I disembarked under the cover of night, a free man, but still a fugitive. From Kenya, I made my way to Uganda, a country known for its openness to refugees. I arrived in Kampala with nothing but the clothes on my back and a small New Testament tucked in my pocket. Exhausted but alive, I walked the crowded streets, the vibrant sounds of the city a stark contrast to the silence of my prison cell. Near Rubaga Cathedral, I found a community of believers who welcomed me like a lost brother. For the first time in nearly a year, I sat in a church, surrounded by worshipers singing praises to Jesus. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "Thank you, Lord. You never abandoned me." The streets of Kampala were alive with sounds I had never known. Vendors calling out in Luganda, children laughing as they played barefoot in the dust, the distant ringing of church bells from Rubaga Cathedral. I had arrived in this city as a broken man, my body frail from prison, and my heart heavy with loss. Yet there was a strange peace settling over me. Each morning, as I walked the short distance from my apartment to the cathedral, I marveled at how far God had brought me. From the marble floors of Emirates Hills to the cold, damp cell of Alawir, and now to this bustling African city. I could see his hand in every step. I often sat in the cathedral's courtyard, Bible in hand, watching the sunrise and whispering prayers for Aliyah and our 3 children. Though they were far away, I believed Jesus could reach their hearts as he had reached mine. Soon after arriving, I connected with a small group of believers who met in secret to support former Muslims like me. Many had fled from Somalia, Sudan, and Eritrea, their stories echoing my own. Families torn apart, lives threatened, faith tested to the breaking point. Together we shared our testimonies, prayed, and encouraged one another to remain steadfast. I began helping underground ministries that provided shelter and resources for new converts. My engineering skills found a surprising use as I helped repair safe houses and set up discreet solar panels for electricity in hidden meeting places. Each time I looked into the eyes of someone freshly arrived from persecution, I saw my own pain reflected, and I reminded them, "You are not forgotten. Jesus sees you. He has a plan for your life." In helping others, I felt my own wounds begin to heal. But even amid this purpose, my heart ached for the family I had lost. I often pictured Aliyah's face, her soft eyes filled with hurt the last time we spoke. I imagined Omar growing tall like his grandfather, Miriam reading Quran at her grandmother's side, and little Khalid clinging to Aliyah's abaya. Did they hate me now? Had they erased me from their memories as Sheikh Rashid surely demanded? Late at night, I lay awake praying for them, asking God to reveal himself in their dreams as he had in mine. "Lord," I whispered, "I know I may never see them again, but let them know your love. Let them find the peace that carried me through the darkness." My longing was deep, but I learned to place it at the feet of Jesus, trusting him to work in their hearts. There were days when memories of Dubai returned like shadows. Friday afternoons at Jumeirah Mosque, Aliyah laughing as we watched the Dubai fountain, Omar's tiny hand in mine as we walked along Jumeirah Beach. These moments brought both joy and pain, but I refused to let bitterness take root. Instead, I chose forgiveness. Forgiveness for Aliyah, who had turned me in out of fear, for Sheikh Rashid, whose wrath had nearly destroyed me, and even for the guards at Alawir, who had mocked and beaten me. I remembered Christ's words on the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." This forgiveness became my liberation, freeing me from the chains of anger and allowing me to walk in the fullness of God's love. One Sunday, as I attended a small church service in a hidden room behind a Kampala shop. I shared my testimony publicly for the first time. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with anticipation as I began to speak. I told them about my childhood in Sharjah, my years as a devout Muslim, my marriage into wealth and influence, and the heavy cost of choosing Christ. As I spoke of prison and near-death experiences, I saw tears in the eyes of men and women who understood too well. I ended with these words: I lost everything, my home, my family, my freedom. But in Christ, I found everything I truly needed. He is faithful. He never abandons his children. As I stepped down, people came forward, some embracing me, others asking how they, too, could stand strong amid persecution. Over time, I began recording video messages for other ex-Muslims in hiding, sharing the hope that had kept me alive. "You are not alone," I said in one recording. "I know the fear you feel, the weight of rejection, the pain of losing those you love. But I promise you this: Jesus sees your tears, he knows your suffering, and he will not leave you. Hold on. You are his, and he is faithful." These messages were smuggled across borders on flash drives and shared secretly in house churches. I prayed that my voice would encourage even one soul to cling to Christ in the face of danger. Though I live as a refugee, I no longer feel like a man without a home. My citizenship is in heaven, and my purpose is clear: to spread the message of God's love to those who have been told he does not love them. I may never again walk the streets of Dubai or see the towering Burj Khalifa, but I no longer need those things to feel whole. My treasure is not in palaces or bank accounts, but in the kingdom of God that cannot be shaken. There are moments when I imagine Aliyah watching one of my recordings in secret, tears streaming down her face as she whispers, "Could it be true?" Perhaps one day Omar, Mariam, and Khalid will read the Injil and understand why their father chose this path. Until then, I will continue to pray and trust that God's love reaches even into the heart of Dubai's wealthiest households. I know the same Savior who found me in the darkness can also find them. To anyone hearing my story, I say this: following Jesus may cost you everything, but what you gain cannot be measured. Do not let fear silence your faith. Do not believe the lie that you are forgotten. Jesus sees you. He knows your pain, and he calls you by name. There is no prison so dark, no family rejection so deep, and no loss so great that his love cannot heal it. I was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I see. And so can you, if you will open your heart and follow him.